Chapter 1, The Exquisite Woman in the Bath. At dawn one day, before the eastern sky had begun to lighten, a milky white flying saucer, shaped like a clattering from a traditional Vietnamese orchestra, landed on Lion Mountain, in Pagoda Lone Village, south of a city. As the saucer landed, it emitted flashing, multicolored rays of dazzling, blinding light. While still several dozen yards above the ground, its arched door sprang open with a shh sound. A head popped out, followed by the tall, muscular body of a clean-cut young man in his early 20s. He suddenly launched himself out, knees bent, arms swept back like wings, and swooped down to the earth like an eagle. Upon landing, he dropped to a crouch with incredible speed, then sprang up like a coiled spring, landing firmly on his feet. However, once upright, he shivered, his body trembling slightly as if not yet acclimated to Earth's atmosphere. A mountain breeze, rustling through the trees, swept over him. He puffed up like a sail, then deflated like an empty sack, his form fluctuating. He couldn't help but huddle, shrinking his neck like a duck. The milky white flying saucer slowly rose from behind him, then accelerated rapidly, vanishing over Lion Mountain like an arrow in the blink of an eye. He turned, suddenly lifting his handsome, expressionless face. The sky was now clear, the milky white saucer gone as if it had never been. He gazed up at the star-studded sky, lost in thought. He started down the mountain, taking long strides, hurrying as if eager to return home, towards the village at the foot of Lion Mountain. Below, lights in the darkened village gradually flickered to life. They resembled stars fallen to earth, scattered across the village at the mountain's base. However, after a while, they began to wink out one by one. The village elders were already awake, their sleep lighter and their rising earlier. At this hour, passers-by on the village paths were still sparse, like hairs on a balding head. Yet, a few farmers, toiling, with their faces to the earth and their backs to the sky, were already diligently working their fields along the roadside. Roosters had crowed several times, and the sounds of mooing cows, bleating goats, grunting pigs, and barking dogs mingled in a cacophonous symphony. After about 21 minutes of walking, he reached the edge of the village at the foot of the mountain, but stopped abruptly. He widened his large, handsome eyes, stunned by the sight before him. Is this my hometown? The village where I lived from childhood? How could it have changed so much? It's truly earth-shattering. Where have the bumpy dirt and gravel roads gone? Now, everything is paved with concrete, neat and straight. And on the summit of the mountain opposite, two towering iron pylons stand majestically. What are they for? Even more unbelievable, most of the houses in the village are brand new 2- or 3-story buildings, rationally arranged and closely spaced, like a fresh painting of the new countryside. He remembered clearly, so clearly, spending winter break, celebrating Tet, then leaving his hometown for university in the city, but had it only been a few short months. He froze, muttering incessantly, how could this be, how could things have changed so much? If you hadn't seen it with your own eyes, who would believe it? Astonishment flashed in his eyes. His head felt like it was about to explode, a chilling sensation, goosebumps rising, cold sweat pouring down. Me, William Miller, have I stepped into the realm of ghosts? Ah, how terrifying! But he didn't believe this was a ghostly place, for he shook his head resolutely, trusting what he saw. Everything could change, but the terrain couldn't be different. He was studying at a prestigious international university, Zhejiang University. Last year, in the fall, he had passed the entrance exam to Zhejiang University with excellent results from City A No. 1 high school. William Miller's admission to Zhejiang University wasn't surprising. In elementary school, he was always a 3-good student, also the class president and captain of the Young Pioneers, a standout, excellent student. But middle school presented some challenges, as he started to enjoy playing, and his academic performance declined. Consequently, his homeroom teacher made numerous home visits to meet his parents, and his mother would pull out the golden cudgel lecture she hadn't given in years, nagging him, forcing him to study hard. Not wanting to disappoint his parents who had worked so hard to raise him, he suppressed his playful nature, gritted his teeth, determined to strive, and his academic performance suddenly topped the class again. Then he smoothly passed the entrance exam to the city's key high school, and then smoothly passed the entrance exam to the prestigious university. In a daze, he returned to the unforgettable strange night. Yesterday, he had been abducted by aliens. This isn't the ghost realm. It's reality. The village is still the same village. But, how can this be explained? He muttered to himself. At this moment, he glanced at his family's private garden. No, now it was contracted farmland. This place had also changed. The small path beside it, once a muddy dirt road, had transformed into a concrete road, but on that plot of land, cauliflower, mustard greens, and water spinach were still growing, undoubtedly planted by his diligent father. Above that plot was a fruit orchard, with more than 10 orange trees, more than 10 strawberry guava trees, more than 10 peach trees, and also 6 plum trees. This concrete road ran straight to the electric pole. It turned out the concreting of this road was for this purpose. When he was little, every summer break, there was always a little girl trailing behind him, snot dripping down her face. He told her not to follow, and she would cry loudly. He chased her, but she wouldn't leave. He hit her, but she wouldn't run away. Over time, he let her tag along. He climbed trees to pick peaches, and she picked up the fallen fruit below. He caught cicadas and gave them to her to hold. She was truly like a little tail. Just like that, they became best friends. Truly childhood sweethearts, two innocent children. When I passed the university entrance exam, she was still in high school. She was my neighbor. Now the snot-nosed girl is nowhere to be seen. She has become a beautiful young woman, like a fairy. Thinking of this, William Miller felt a bit of solace, a smile finally blooming on his face. Dad. Mom. William's home. Unsure whether he was happy or sad, William Miller, with a restless and anxious heart, hurried into his family's courtyard. The whole village had undergone an earth-shattering transformation, with every house newly built, yet his remained the same old 3-room tiled house, gray, gloomy, and dark. Pushing the door open and stepping inside, he immediately smelled a musty odor, a thick, pungent mold of years, hitting him straight in the nose. He stepped over the threshold, and after only 2 steps, messy cobwebs clung to his face, clothes, and hair. He hurriedly brushed them away, but the webs wouldn't tear. As he swung his hand, dust from the ceiling rained down on his head with a poof poof. Without any lights, the room was pitch black, like stepping into a tunnel. William Miller's eyes couldn't adjust immediately, so he had to grope his way in. Gradually, he saw patches of mottled lime walls, like the makeup of an old woman. He continued walking, his footsteps vibrating the air, causing pieces of lime to fall from the wall. Although the furniture in the room was still neatly arranged, when William Miller wiped his hand across it, a thick layer of dust appeared, like sand covering everything. The more he looked, the more uneasy he felt. What was going on with this house? Could it be that no one had lived here for a long time? How could it be like this? He had only been gone for a short while. Father, mother, where are you? My parents, where have you gone? Why has it become like this? Lost in thought, William Miller's head felt like it was about to explode. William Miller suddenly felt dizzy, the world spinning, as if the sky was about to collapse. He held his head and slowly crouched down. William Miller sat down on the ground and wailed, God. Why is it like this? Why are you tormenting me like this? William Miller felt miserable, felt wronged. He was heartbroken. He was overwhelmed with emotion. He wanted to cry, but no tears came. Father, mother, where are you? William Miller slowly raised his head and called softly. He looked around, seeing only a terrifying stillness. He searched the familiar house, and suddenly his eyes fixed on the wall in the center of the house. On that wall, 2 portraits draped in black mourning cloth suddenly appeared, a couple, neither old or young, with gentle faces and eyes looking at him. For a moment, William Miller's jaw dropped, stunned. How could this be? How could this be? God, please tell me. His heart ached immensely. Thud. William Miller knelt down, a clean, decisive kneel, like an ironwood mallet pounding the ground, a resounding thud. William Miller crawled on his knees to his parents' portraits. His insides felt like they were tearing apart. He sobbed silently, tears streaming down, row, dripping onto the ground, tom, like shattered magnolia petals, soaking the floor. Weeping miserably, William Miller fainted, losing consciousness, falling to the ground with a thud. After an unknown amount of time, William Miller gradually woke up. He cried again. After crying, he crawled up. He knelt down and kowtowed 3 times solemnly before his parents' portraits, knock. Just like that, William Miller knelt before his parents' portraits like a wooden statue, motionless. After an hour, William Miller's mood calmed slightly, but his stomach suddenly growled. Rumble. Truth was, William Miller's stomach was empty, gnawing with hunger and thirst. He knew food was essential, even with his parents gone. Grief couldn't stop the body's needs, iron will or not, an empty belly demanded attention. He had to eat. Familiar with his home, he went to the kitchen on the right, expecting water. Lifting the lid of the water jar, he froze. It was bone dry. Despair threatened to engulf him, but instead of tears, he cursed his luck. Damn it, when you're down, even farting hurts. Not even a drop of water to drink. Just my luck. Looking around, William Miller considered fetching water from the well, 20 paces from the house. Quench his thirst, then cook. But returning with the water, setting the bucket down, he opened the rice container. Another blow. Empty. Not a single grain. The rice container, a black 30-kilo paint can he'd bought before university, was not only empty but gnawed through by rats, a fist-sized hole revealing raisin-like droppings. Disgusting. Is anyone home? A voice boomed, seemingly from everywhere and nowhere, echoing his mother's tone. Could she be alive? What about the portrait? But the voice wasn't quite right, like a ghost, or an angel. A shiver of fear mixed with a surge of hope. Hashtag Chapter 2 Tenderness within the quilt. William Miller's voice, hoarse from weeping, answered clearly, "It's me. William Miller." "Oh, William. You're home. Wonderful. I've been waiting, longing for your return. Thank heavens." A woman of about 50, with a kind face, entered from the yard. Neatly dressed in trousers, leather shoes, and a thick gray-blue coat that didn't quite conceal her ample bosom, despite her slender frame. She looked up, her gaze finding William Miller as he hurried from the kitchen. Recognizing him, her kind face blossomed into a radiant smile. Then, her expression shifted, tears welling and streaming down her face as she repeatedly wiped her eyes. "Aunt Miles." Emotion choked William Miller. He trembled, voice thick with tears. He longed to embrace her, to sob against her, but instead, he wiped his eyes and repeated tenderly, "Aunt Miles. Don't cry, don't cry. William, my dear boy." Aunt Miles patted his shoulder, wiping his tears, soothing him like a child. "Aunt, I." William Miller struggled to speak, his despair overwhelming. He wanted to bang his head against a wall, end it all. What was the point? "My dear William, don't say another word. Auntie understands." Aunt Miles immediately stopped William Miller from speaking. But what did she understand? Her eyes darted around the ground, then her face fell with disappointment. Curiously, she asked, "William, where's your luggage?" "I don't have any luggage, I don't have anything, I'm empty-handed, Auntie." William Miller said bitterly, then gave a wry laugh, uglier than crying. "Good heavens." Aunt Miles sighed, thinking, "Good heavens, William, "Oh William, you've been gone so long, how could you not even have a single piece of luggage? How could you have fallen so low, be so unlucky?" However, she didn't say anything more, but instead said understandingly, "Come on. Come with Auntie. Let's get your belly full first." Aunt Miles's house was right in front of William Miller's. She led him into her living room, which was also the central room of the house. "William, have a seat." Aunt Miles urged William Miller to sit on the sofa in the living room, poured him a glass of filtered water, and said, "If you want more, help yourself. Don't be shy. Make yourself at home. Auntie's going to cook." Gulp, gulp, William Miller held the disposable cup and drank like a dragon ascending a mountain, downing 3 cups in a row before wiping his mouth and saying emotionally, "Ah. I'm drinking the water of my hometown again." But just drinking water couldn't fill his stomach, his hunger pangs grew louder. Just then, Aunt Miles came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and softly called, "William, dinner's ready." His eyes lit up as a sumptuous feast appeared before him: scrambled eggs with lettuce, stir-fried celery with squid, pork with cauliflower, vermicelli with cabbage, steamed golden fish, skate baked with turnips, prawns, spider crabs, dried eel, and a bowl of salty fish and potato soup. The meal was mainly seafood, followed by vegetables, with very little meat. William Miller's eyes were glued to the dishes. Without a word, he grabbed his chopsticks, picked up his rice bowl, and devoured the food like a whirlwind, like a starving ghost reincarnated, like a prisoner just released from jail. He was truly, truly famished. "Slow down, slow down. Look at you, no one's fighting you for it. What's the rush? Hee hee." Aunt Miles chuckled, watching him gobble down his food. "William, where have you been all these years?" Aunt Miles waited until William Miller put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth, rubbed his belly with a satisfied expression, and then asked him. "All these years, me?" William Miller looked at Aunt Miles as if she were an alien, utterly astonished, his eyes and mouth forming a perfect O. "Yes. What's wrong? Did Auntie say something wrong, child?" Aunt Miles said calmly, smiling at him. "Silly boy, you've been away so long you've lost track of time. Why are you acting so confused? All these years, 5 years. 5 years of what? Why 5 years? It hasn't been that long. It was clearly last night. I was coming back to the dorm from the library, there was a thunderstorm, and aliens took advantage of the chaos to abduct me. This morning, they dropped me off at Lion Mountain in their flying saucer, and I came back." William Miller bounced out of his chair like a ball, gesticulating wildly, saliva spraying as he spoke. "Enough, enough." Aunt Miles raised her voice, then softened her tone, realizing shouting wasn't helpful. "Child, the more you study, the more confused you become, the less honest you are. What nonsense are you talking about? You're making Auntie's head spin. The university expelled you a long time ago. You think Auntie doesn't know? The whole village knows. You ran away from university, everyone calls it going missing, right? My head hurts, I'm a little dizzy." William Miller collapsed into a chair, clutching his head. Had he really been gone for so long? His parents were the clearest proof. When he left, they were healthy, but now they were both gone. He remembered when Aunt Miles had a full bosom, curvy hips, a bright face, and a youthful, charming appearance that everyone loved. Now, although her figure hadn't changed much, wrinkles had appeared on her face, and strands of gray hair streaked her temples. Had it really been that long? College, according to his aunt, he couldn't go back, he'd been expelled. Oh, the cruel hand of fate. William Miller wailed in anguish within his heart. Well, speak up. Aunt Miles stared intently at William Miller's slightly trembling face, her brow furrowed. Do you really want to worry me to death? Your parents, because of your disappearance, their minds became distraught, they fell ill with melancholy, and they hurriedly, one after the other, departed from this world. Oh dear! My boy, my boy! What am I to do with you? I. William Miller had the sudden urge to bang his head and end it all. If he told the truth, who would believe him? They'd think he was crazy. He resolved to lie. "Aunt, I won't hide it from you, I ran off to a foreign country to live a vagabond life." A foreign country? How could you do such a thing? Well, that's what people have been saying about you. If it were a few decades ago, doing that would be considered treason, but things are different now. Aunt Miles really wanted to give William Miller a good scolding, but her heart softened. However, her eyes remained red-rimmed, and she nearly burst into tears. A wave of grief washed over William Miller. His nose stung, and he wanted to cry out loud, but he suddenly remembered that this was his aunt's house, and he couldn't be so unrestrained and let loose like that. He forced back his sobs, turning them into sniffles, wanting to cry but unable to. "It's good that you're back." Eleanor Miles finally calmed down. "Thank you, Aunt, for taking me in," William Miller said gratefully, offering 1,000 thanks. "William, we'll choose an auspicious day, and I'll take you to visit your parents' graves. Tell them you've returned. William, let them rest in peace." Yes, I'll listen to you. Let you arrange everything." William Miller rubbed his eyes and blew his nose, his voice hoarse. "Besides me, don't repeat that nonsense you were saying earlier to anyone. Do you understand?" Aunt Miles spoke very seriously. "Why is that?" William Miller's eyes widened in surprise as he looked at her. "If you keep talking like that, do you know how you'll die?" "Die how, Aunt?" William Miller grew even more curious. Could his aunt actually know how he would die in the future? Laughed to death. Aunt Miles had intended to say this seriously, but she was amused by her own humor, and a smile spread across her face. "If you keep talking like that, you'll really be laughed right out of your teeth, and we won't be able to afford replacements. People will say you're crazy." "Aunt, I understand." William Miller thought she was right. The words of an ordinary country woman like his aunt were pure wisdom, unshakable truths. Truly rare. "That's right, William, my son." Auntie Miles reached out and stroked his head, a gesture as intimate as if he were her own flesh and blood. "Oh my," Auntie Miles sighed, then continued, "William, whatever you did abroad, it's good that you're back. Whether you're a boss or a beggar on the street, whether you make a lot of money or not a single penny, I will still treat you well. William, my son, your safe and healthy return is more important than anything. You've grown taller, stronger, and more handsome these past few years. And I'm truly overjoyed. From now on, this is your home. I consider you my own son. If you don't mind, think of me as your foster mother. Auntie, my dear auntie." William Miller called out affectionately, then buried his head in Auntie Miles's embrace. Her arms were still as gentle and soft as ever, like a cradle, mesmerizing him. "Enough. Enough. My son, having such a capable son like you is a blessing." Auntie Miles held his head, stroking his messy, crow's nest-like hair, and said tenderly, "Get up. Go take a bath and have a good sleep. I'll go and prepare things for you." After washing up in the bathroom, William Miller rolled onto the bed Auntie Miles had prepared downstairs. Immediately, his snores thundered, sleeping straight through the afternoon, then from afternoon to evening, a truly masterful display of slumber. Buzz, a striped mosquito landed on his face and gave him a painful bite. He felt both pain and itchiness, instinctively reaching up to scratch. Opening his eyes, he saw pitch darkness, the room was completely dark. He knew night had fallen. Isn't night time for sleeping? William Miller opened his eyes, thought for a moment, then closed them again and continued to sleep. After an unknown amount of time, a rustling sound pulled William Miller from his dreams. He opened his eyes and saw a strong light shining in from the square, meter-wide window. William Miller remembered clearly, Auntie's room was at the front of the house, the kitchen at the back, and a bathroom between the two. The light was coming from the bathroom window, so strong that he couldn't open his eyes fully. Who's taking a bath? Is it Auntie, or someone else? William Miller wondered sleepily, but gradually his eyes adjusted, and the light seemed normal, no longer blinding. The small window was placed low to provide light for the bathroom. William Miller only needed to raise his head slightly to see inside. Although, William Miller wasn't curious, in other words, he didn't want to peek. However, this time was different. William Miller's eyes suddenly widened. He couldn't help but sit up slightly, captivated by the alluring upper body of the person bathing. How strange. How could Auntie Miles, a woman nearing old age, have such a slender figure and smooth, white skin? Chapter 3, The Budding of Desire. William Miller looked closely. Her long, black hair cascaded down her rounded shoulders, her neck as slender and white as a swan's. The lower he looked, the smoother and whiter her skin appeared. Her breasts were even more miraculous, not like those of a woman over 50, but like the mounds of a young girl, full, firm, like the proud breasts of a goddess statue in a park, sensual and alluring, like a fertile, untouched land. Suddenly, William Miller felt a pang of guilt. Peeping at his aunt's body was a heinous sin. Yet, while his mind reeled, his lower body, driven by primal urges, remained unhesitating. The more he tried to resist sinning, the stronger his desire to sin became. William Miller wrestled with himself, conflicted. One part of him craved the visual feast, while the other vehemently protested, urging him to close his eyes and avert his gaze from the captivating scene. Click, a faint sound. The bright light of the bathroom heater lamp abruptly vanished, plunging the room into darkness. The Aunt Miles of William Miller's imagination had finally finished her bath. He felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment, unsure which emotion was stronger. But, William Miller reasoned, Aunt Miles, after finishing her bath, would surely go upstairs to rest, perhaps even sleep. She wouldn't return to this room, would she? A rustling sound from within the room reached William Miller's ears. It suggested to him that his aunt had slipped into his room. Aunt Miles, oh Aunt Miles, what are you planning? William Miller found himself inexplicably reproaching Aunt Miles. A bizarre thought then struck him, could it be that his aunt intended to make a move on him? If so, he couldn't entirely blame her. Widowed for so many years, her husband gone so early, without a man, a woman would naturally feel lonely and restless. Today, fate had presented her with a dashing young man, a charming fellow, William Miller mused, a touch of narcissism creeping in. He quickly dismissed the thought. Perhaps, he reasoned, Aunt Miles merely wanted to retrieve something from his room. William Miller, trying to avoid dwelling on matters of the flesh, convinced himself that she would simply find her item and quietly return upstairs. Wrong. If she were searching for something, wouldn't she turn on the light? William Miller pondered. But that's not right either, maybe she doesn't want to disturb me. If Aunt Miles knew I was still awake, secretly watching her, she'd be mortified, utterly humiliated. But he absolutely couldn't let her know he was watching. What to do? Feign sleep. William Miller squeezed his eyes shut, deceiving himself into a pretense of slumber. He dared not even breathe deeply, nearly suffocating himself in the process. Yet, he sensed that Aunt Miles, far from leaving, was inching closer to the edge of his bed. His head swelled with anxiety, unsure how to react. He thought, I should warn her, but then reconsidered. Warning her seemed just as bad as not warning her. What to do? What to do? Just then, something unexpected happened. Aunt Miles abruptly yanked back his blanket and slipped beneath the warm covers with him. Ah! As cool skin met warm flesh, William Miller imagined both he and Aunt Miles crying out simultaneously. An earth-shattering, ear-splitting scream. William Miller and the Aunt Miles of his imagination bolted upright at the same time. The ceiling light flicked on. William Miller's eyes widened like saucers. Instead of his imagined Aunt Miles, he saw a young woman, beautiful as a flower, a jade treasure. Astonishment robbed him of speech. "Who are you? Who are you?" A long moment passed, then William Miller and the beautiful woman simultaneously pointed at each other in surprise. "You're William Miller." "William, oh my God!" Rose Miles exclaimed joyfully. "You're Rose Miles." "Rose! Oh my God!" William Miller was overjoyed. Well, well. What luck! On his first night back home, he'd met a beauty. A single man and a single woman, sharing a room. In this special situation, he felt a thrill of excitement. He never would have guessed that the sniveling little girl from his past could become so stunning. He was ecstatic. Beyond his immense joy, William Miller feigned nonchalance, but his happiness was immeasurable. You. But at this moment, William Miller harbored no ill intentions towards Rose Miles. Even if he did, he wouldn't point at Rose Miles' alluring, braless upper body like that, then quickly avert his gaze. After her shower, Rose Miles, wanting comfort and convenience, hadn't bothered with a bra, wearing only pink panties. She'd thought, who would break into my own room? Who knew tonight she'd encounter a thief, William Miller, the man she'd longed for? I don't care, humph. You saw me already, so. William Miller, you jerk. Rose Miles fumed, slapping him a few times before hopping off the bed. Dazed from Rose Miles's slaps, William Miller rubbed his face, watching her go in bewilderment. Damn it, I could slap myself silly. How could I be so stupid? My brain must be waterlogged. William Miller cursed inwardly. He regretted his feigned chivalry. Secretly admiring the alluring, sniveling little girl was a dream come true, so why play the gentleman? Damn it, how will I die later? Probably from stupidity. He wanted to slap himself a few more times. What are you doing? Rose Miles, now dressed in her bra and sleepwear, had her back to William Miller. Hearing a strange noise, she asked curiously. Killing mosquitoes. William Miller blurted out a lie. There are mosquitoes at this hour. Rose Miles, fully dressed now, turned and asked suspiciously. Why wouldn't there be, you snot-nosed brat? William Miller grinned, his composure and humor returning now that she was clothed. I'll kill you, I'll kill you. Rose Miles, her face flushed, gave a strained laugh and suddenly lunged at him, grabbing a pillow as a weapon and pummeling him for reasons unknown. Rose Miles hit him while scolding, I'll kill you. I'm grown up now, and you still call me by that nickname. Don't call me that again, or I'll. You darn girl. Why did you come home without a word? No warning at all. You darn girl. William, did she scare you? Hearing the commotion downstairs, Auntie Miles returned from her neighbor's house. Seeing her daughter Rose Miles hitting William Miller with a pillow, she scolded her sharply. Mom, you're taking sides. Siding with an outsider. Siding with William Miller. You don't love your own daughter. Rose Miles whined to Auntie Miles, but her face betrayed her joy. Then, with a charming smile, she said, I wasn't planning on coming back, but since tomorrow's a day off, I thought, it's better to be home. Who knew that darn William Miller would fall out of the sky and have the nerve to be lying on my bed? I'm all right, I'm perfectly fine, Auntie. William Miller said, almost fawning, to Mrs. Miles. Rose is back, I'm overjoyed. We were just messing around. He finished with a goofy grin, secretly delighted. This was the first time in his life he'd seen a woman in such a state of undress. William Miller, you damn fool, I mention you're getting chubby and you start panting. You're a man, what are you afraid of? If anything happens, it's us women who'll suffer. It's me, Rose Miles. Rose Miles glared at him, her eyes blazing with scorn and reproach. Heh heh, William Miller rubbed his head and nose, grinning sheepishly at Rose Miles, then at Mrs. Miles. Idiot. Rose Miles chuckled, standing tall with her chest out, looking incredibly alluring and seductive, her reprimand laced with a hint of pride. William, my dear boy, are you hungry? Mrs. Miles, infected by William Miller's goofiness, asked with a doting smile. Mom. Rose Miles, catching the drift, interrupted William Miller with a coquettish call, glancing at him with amusement as his jaw dropped in another goofy grin. She calls me an idiot, I'll be an idiot for her. William Miller thought to himself. What's the matter, my girl? Has this old woman offended you again? Mrs. Miles asked Rose Miles, her tone laced with mock displeasure. Mom, why aren't you asking me? Rose Miles whined, directing her question at both Mrs. Miles and William Miller. Chapter 4, A Seductive Provocation. Why would I ask you? Didn't you stuff yourself that day? You know William only had one meal today. Shouldn't this old woman care about him? His parents are gone, who will care for him if I don't? Huh? You tell me, you little rascal. And you say I shouldn't ask you what? Haven't you had dinner yet? Mrs. Miles rambled, wiping away tears, a mix of grief and affection in her voice. Oh. My goodness. Mom, I didn't know. Mom, William. I'm so sorry. Rose Miles stuck out her bright red tongue, a pang of remorse hitting her. Why hadn't she thought it through, asked properly, instead of being so selfish? She looked at William Miller with genuine regret. It's okay, it's really okay. Besides, I'm not hungry. I've been lazing around all day, haven't exerted myself. I'm not hungry, honestly. William Miller reassured the agitated Mrs. Miles and the remorseful Rose Miles, feigning magnanimity. William, Rose, you two chat, but don't bicker all the time, especially you, Rose, always ready with your fists. I'm going to cook. Mrs. Miles said with a smile. Yes, mother dear. Rose Miles saluted Mrs. Miles, like a soldier acknowledging her general. Rose Miles was in her nightgown, her glossy black hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, droplets of water still sparkling on the strands. Her elegant, swan-like neck glowed, and the curves of her breasts pressed against the fabric of her nightgown, sparking his imagination. William Miller regretted telling her to cover up. He wished she'd stayed that way, a feast for his eyes, a scene of exquisite grace. While William Miller and Rose Miles chatted, Mrs. Miles finished preparing dinner. It wasn't as lavish as lunch, but still quite delicious. Though William Miller kept saying he wasn't hungry, his stomach rumbled loudly. The next morning, William Miller yawned widely, stretched, and quickly dressed in the clothes Mrs. Miles had laid out for him. Then, he called out towards the door, "Come in. You crybaby. Damn it, William Miller, you called me that awful name again. Do you want to die, first thing in the morning?" Rose Miles immediately glared, her fierceness purely verbal. A captivating smile played on her lips as she scolded him, barging in with enough energy to tear William Miller into 8 pieces. Sorry, gorgeous Miles. I won't do it again. William Miller hastily jumped out of bed, dashing from head to foot, then leaping to the floor. He raised his hands in surrender, chuckling nervously. Honestly. Since you called me gorgeous, I'll let you off. No next time. Hear me, damn William Miller. Loud and clear. I, damn William Miller, hear you, gorgeous. A glint of cunning flashed in William Miller's eyes. She liked being called gorgeous, so he'd call her that often. It didn't cost anything, after all. What the? Rose Miles stared at William Miller's outfit, her red lips parting in astonishment. Are those Harper's hand-me-downs? Forget whether they're new or old, they don't even fit. You look ridiculous, people will laugh themselves silly. Hee hee. Honestly, my mother, it's fine, it's fine. William Miller examined his clothes from top to bottom, left to right. Goodness, you really don't see it. Just come with me. Rose Miles said. Where does my gorgeous Rose want to take me? William Miller asked. Don't ask so many questions. Here. Rose Miles handed William Miller a blue helmet, putting on a red one herself. She spoke to the bewildered William Miller, let's go. Big Brother William. This was the first time he'd heard Rose Miles call him Big Brother. Oh. William Miller grinned sheepishly, obediently taking the helmet from Rose Miles and putting it on. He strode over and sat behind her on a motorbike. Hold on tight, William. Rose said, starting the motorbike. Whoosh. Rose sped along the winding road towards town with William. After about 15 minutes, with a screech, the motorbike stopped in front of a shop. Rose, arm in arm with William, entered a clothing store. Their paired figures, a true, golden boy and jade girl, looked like lovers, instantly brightening the entire shop. Oh, look. Check it out, handsome guy, beautiful girl arriving. Everyone in the store, including the owner, turned to look at William and Rose, their eyes filled with varying degrees of envy and admiration. The clothing store wasn't large, but it was well stocked and divided into men's and women's sections. After entering, Rose, with a flirtatious glance, released William's arm and headed straight for the men's section. William looked up, then down, unsure what to do. Since he was with Rose, he pretended to browse the clothes, wandering over to the women's section. He noticed a glass door slightly ajar. Just then, a girl in bra and panties, practically half naked, appeared in the doorway. William, initially thinking it was a lingerie advertisement, glanced up. However, the advertisement moved, the young woman's pale arms and slender legs shifting. Doubt gnawed at William. The mounds in her tiny bra, like two white rabbits about to spring free, the deep cleavage seemingly bottomless, threatened to drown his gaze. His eyes trailed downwards, landing on two smooth, pale, slender thighs, barely concealed by cicada-wing-thin panties that hinted at the shadowy jungle beneath. Holy moly! What in the world? This is terrifying. William quickly shut his eyes, mouth dry, throat and entire body burning with a sudden surge of primal desire. After a moment, he cautiously opened his eyes. The woman, graceful and in her early 20s, emerged from the door, completely oblivious to his previous voyeurism. She glanced at William, who feigned interest in the ceiling, her gaze lingering for several minutes. Guessing she hadn't left, William lowered his gaze, meeting the woman's eyes. They exchanged a smile. A pleasant feeling settled over William. Her smile was captivating, enchanting. Bloody hell, what a stroke of luck. William grinned foolishly, thinking, a feast for the eyes and a sweet dessert, her alluring smile. Are you shopping for clothes? The woman smiled. Yeah, are you too? William smiled back. Yes. Have you tried anything on yet? She asked, smiling. Not yet. Are you finished? William replied with a grin. William, over here. Rose, holding a blue suit, beckoned him from the women's section. She's calling me, gotta go, bye. Seeing Rose, William didn't dare delay. He waved goodbye to the woman and strode over to Rose. Bye. The woman smiled seductively, thinking, he's handsome, but a bit daft. Probably not from Earth. Turn around. Turn around. William allowed Rose to spin him. Rose Miles told William Miller to take off his shirt, and he did. She told him to try on the suit, and he did. She told him to turn around, and he did. She told him to turn back, and he did. Shopkeeper, I'll take this suit. Can you give me a little discount? Rose Miles smiled, beginning to haggle. $250. William Miller suddenly interjected. Looking at the shopkeeper's serious expression, he seemed to be in earnest. You and your 250. The shopkeeper glared at him, furious. What's wrong with 250? William Miller looked at the shopkeeper with a puzzled, serious expression. Everyone burst out laughing. William Miller scratched his head, rubbed his nose, and stared at Rose Miles with bewildered eyes. What's wrong with 250? Why is the shopkeeper angry? Why is everyone laughing? William, come here for a second. What you just said wasn't right. 250 foot, it's an insult. Rose Miles pulled William Miller aside and whispered. Huh? William Miller blushed, momentarily speechless, thinking to himself, 250 is just a number, how can it be an insult? Hashtag Chapter 5, teasing the village cadre's spring splendor, brilliant sunshine, exceptionally clear weather. In this often rainy spring, it was a rare beautiful day. At this moment, in William Miller's yard, William Miller stood straight, legs apart, looking up at the beautiful clear blue sky. William Miller adjusted his tie. Perhaps it was tied too tight, making him uncomfortable. Too serious, he still wasn't used to wearing a suit so formally. William Miller tugged at his yellow plaid tie, loosening it a bit. This formal suit was bought for him yesterday by Rose Miles for 2,000 yuan, the jacket, trousers, leather tie, and leather shoes, making William Miller look even more handsome and stylish, with an air of heroic spirit and unrestrained charm. William Miller bit his lip, remembering this, his whole body trembled slightly. He was always like this when agitated. He had never dressed like this before, never looked so good, so neat and tidy. This appearance of his was just like his self-deprecating words. He looked like a proper person. Auntie, what about the lonely elderly, the disabled, and the struggling households in the village? How are they living? Recalling yesterday afternoon, William Miller put on a pious air, feigning compassion for all beings, worrying about the country, and asked Aunt Miles. They receive social assistance. Aunt Miles was momentarily taken aback by the question, then smiled and said. What is social assistance? William Miller scratched his head, looking up blankly. In truth, he had never heard of this term. It guarantees a minimum standard of living. That is, each person receives 200 yuan per month from the government as living expenses, to solve the problem of food and clothing. Aunt Miles, having been a women's cadre, spoke these words very naturally, and after finishing, she looked at William Miller strangely, and suddenly said, William, don't tell me you want to apply for social assistance too. No, no. How could I? William Miller immediately denied, faster than anyone, and after speaking, turned his face away, not daring to look directly at Aunt Miles. It's best that you don't. You're so healthy, how can you receive social assistance? Even if you really wanted to, the government might not give it to you. Aunt Miles said to William Miller. Yes, Auntie. William Miller gave a wry smile. Don't even dream about it. Aunt Miles admonished him again. Of course, of course. William Miller said. Good heavens, what's wrong with that, Auntie? William Miller thought to himself, at least it could help him through this difficult time, and he could return it later when he had the means. Scrap metal. Scrap metal here. A middle-aged man driving a three-wheeled electric vehicle piled high with scrap metal, iron, old newspapers, and plastic waste, shouted loudly as he slowly passed by William Miller's yard. Hey, hey, scrap metal, mister, come here for a moment. Looking up in a daze, touching his nose, William Miller adjusted his yellow plaid tie and rather politely waved to the scrap metal collector. The scrap collector braked his electric vehicle with a screech, stopped it on the concrete road, nimbly jumped off, and strode into the miller's yard. The scrap collector stood in William Miller's yard, rubbing his hands on his legs, his eyes looking at William Miller with the air of a righteous gentleman. William Miller, hands shoved deep in his trouser pockets, feigning nonchalance, gestured towards the jumbled mess in the yard. "Take a look, old-timer. Anything you can use? Help yourself, take it all." William Miller looked up, startled, blinked a few times in thought, then tugged at his tie and headed inside. After a few steps, he turned back. "Keep clearing it out. I've got more. You'll strike it rich today." Scrap making someone rich? Daydreaming in broad daylight. What a load of bull from this kid. By the time William Miller carried out armfuls of old textbooks, workbooks, newspapers, and magazines from his elementary and middle school days, the scrap collector had nearly cleared the yard. Metal, plastic, and paper were separated into neat piles, resembling desolate burial mounds. "Why are you staring at me?" William Miller snapped, frowning at the scrap collector, who had been glancing up at him while weighing the items on his scale. "Nothing, young man, you're just fussy." "Fussier than an old granny," the scrap collector muttered cryptically, shaking his head. "What did you say?" William Miller caught the sarcasm in the old man's tone. Irritation flared. Like a tiger stranded on the plains, mocked by a dog. "Even a scrap collector looks down on me. But then, screw it. What's the point of arguing with an old scrap collector? Damn it, if I wasn't in a good mood today, I wouldn't be so polite. I'd knock you flat, teach you a lesson." In his mind, William Miller unleashed a furious beating upon the scrap collector. The old man coughed up blood and teeth, his nose bleeding, begging on his knees, "Please, sir, I won't do it again. How could I look down on you? You could crush me like a bug with your little finger. Spare me." A surge of satisfaction coursed through him. Scrap. Scrap. The scrap collector drove off in his electric cart. William Miller, beaming, counted the cash from the scrap, tucked it into his pocket, and glanced up at the bright sky with the smug look of a man who'd just made a killing. He strolled towards the village and entered a small shop. Let me. Mary Carter, a busty woman, pushed past an elderly lady to the counter, smiling at William Miller. "What can I get for you?" William Miller scratched his head, one hand in his pocket, the other pointing at the glass cabinet displaying an array of colorful cigarette packs. He flicked his middle and ring fingers in a practiced gesture. "Which one would you like?" Mary Carter calmly looked up at William Miller's face. I don't know." William Miller scratched his head again, feigning cluelessness. His expression was aloof, yet cool, exuding an indescribable charm that seemed irresistible to women. Mary Carter glanced at him, a flicker of something in her eyes, but quickly composed herself. "Don't you smoke?" Mary Carter smiled at him naturally. "I need them." "Just pick any one, ma'am." William Miller grinned goofily at Mary Carter. "Oh." Mary Carter felt a peculiar intensity in William Miller's gaze, a mesmerizing penetration. There was a melancholic depth in his eyes, a sadness she couldn't quite place. She froze, a thought flitting through her mind, "Oh, I'm smitten." Mary Carter possessed a lovely, doll-like face and a graceful, full figure, only her height wasn't particularly striking, about 5'3", average for this village. "How come I've never seen you around?" William Miller thought to himself, "Before now, kiddo, how have I never laid eyes on this little beauty?" "I've been married and living in this village for 4 years, Mary Carter said with a smile. "Oh, that explains it." William Miller couldn't help but glance up at her. Whoa. The little beauty dressed quite fashionably. Spring was arriving, the weather still nippy, yet her attire was light. William Miller noticed she wore a close-fitting, dark purple, thin wool sweater that accentuated her ample bosom, as if straining to break free. The low neckline revealed a smooth expanse of white skin and a deep, alluring cleavage, provocative, stirring daydreams and fantasies. William Miller's gaze lingered on her, feeling a burning sensation. However, his self-control was strong, and he quickly regained his composure. "Will this kind do?" Mary Carter seemed pleased, smiling brightly as she showed him, 20 dong should be alright, the Chinese ones are a bit pricey. I'll take the 20 dong pack, as you suggest, William Miller said, patting his vest pocket. Mary Carter nodded with a smile, handing him the cigarettes. As he paid, William Miller's hand brushed against hers. She felt the warmth of his touch. Don't catch a cold now, William Miller said with a goofy grin, taking the cigarettes and his change from Mary Carter. I won't. Mary Carter was momentarily taken aback, initially confused, but quickly understanding. Thank you, she replied. Beautiful, spring's chilly, don't prioritize fashion over warmth. William Miller quipped, striding out of the shop. Oh no, not at all. Mary Carter blushed, giggling shyly, come back and visit often. William Miller tucked the cigarettes into his pocket. With provisions in hand, his worries eased, just as Chairman Fox had said. His spirits lifted as he walked down the main road past the committee headquarters, invigorated. The cold wind sliced at his face, but he felt nothing. He strode along, the wind swirling around him. A few dozen long-legged, skinny white storks foraged in the paddy fields, their gait awkward, the wind revealing flashes of red skin beneath their feathers. Perhaps startled by William Miller's heavy footfalls, they suddenly took flight, wings beating, a flash of white against the sky, soaring over William Miller's head, the riverbank, the water spinach fields, the tangerine orchards, towards the sea. Young man, are you? Many villagers asked William Miller this as he walked. Yes, uncle, sir, ma'am, everyone. You don't recognize me, I've been away a long time. But do you recognize my father, Dennis Miller? I'm his son. William Miller responded to each inquiry in this way. Ah, William Miller. I didn't recognize you. William Miller took the stairs 2 at a time to the second-floor office of the Commune Committee. He knocked on an office door, but after a while, receiving no answer, he pushed it open and entered. The room was empty. William Miller scratched his head and backed out. Reaching the third room, he found a large door wide open, revealing a man and a woman inside. William Miller recognized the man as Chairman Danielson of the village committee. The woman looked quite young, around Rose Miles' age. Ah, right, William Miller suddenly remembered Rose Miles mentioning her, a village cadre assigned to their hamlet named Emily Grant. It was indeed Emily Grant. Village cadre Emily Grant sat beside the desk, Chairman Danielson standing next to her, their heads nearly touching, leaning close. Chairman Danielson's face was practically glued to hers, as if whispering, laughing and chatting cheerfully, creating a lively and harmonious atmosphere. When William Miller appeared at the door, Chairman Danielson and Emily Grant both turned their heads, looking at him in surprise. Chairman Danielson, I'm William Miller. You probably don't recognize me. I'm Dennis Miller's son. William Miller took out the 20-cent pack of cigarettes he'd bought at Mary Carter's store, offering one to Chairman Danielson. The chairman accepted, but when offered to Emily Grant, she declined. He placed it on her desk, then took one for himself, sticking it in his mouth. Having distributed the cigarettes, he introduced himself. Oh. Chairman Danielson lit the cigarette William Miller had given him, tapped off the ash, then with a sudden understanding, reached out and patted William Miller's shoulder in a friendly manner. Lad, it's good you're back. Good you're back. Goodness, so many people were worried about you, it's good you're back. Chairman Danielson kept repeating the phrase, it's good you're back. Yes, yes, I've caused everyone trouble. William Miller scratched his head, laughing awkwardly, looking at Chairman Danielson and then at Emily Grant. Emily Grant noticed William Miller looking at her, his gaze carrying a hint of admiration. She offered him a slight smile in return, a look of understanding passing between them. Emily Grant's smile revealed 2 charming dimples, deep and sweet. Along with the smile, she nodded at William Miller in greeting, a polite gesture. A university student, an intellectual, one must always be polite. Moreover, she felt a certain fondness for him, though she couldn't quite explain why. Sit down. Sit down. Chairman Danielson gestured towards the leather sofa beside him. Yes, yes. William Miller, feeling overwhelmed by the hospitality, nodded and bowed to Chairman Danielson, as if treated as an honored guest. Politely, he said, Chairman Danielson, please, you sit too. William Miller, is there something you need? Chairman Danielson sat down on a wooden chair next to the sofa. The sofa seemed lower, the wooden chair slightly higher, as if to maintain a sense of equality. William Miller scratched his head, looked up blankly for a moment, scratched his head again, looked up blankly again, repeating the action, ultimately unable to speak. It's all right, just say it. Chairman Danielson put on an approachable air, as if to dispel William Miller's anxieties. If you have difficulties, seek out the authorities. The village committee is also a level of government, isn't it? Just say it, it's all right. Chapter 6, Winning the Beauty's Favor. Seeing William Miller hesitate, Emily Grant looked at him with bright, encouraging eyes. I'd like to apply for social assistance. William Miller gritted his teeth, thinking, I dare you. My temper's flaring, I'm going for it. Then write a petition. Director Danielson, seemingly not fully attentive, casually replied to William Miller. Yes, Director Danielson, I'll write it right away. William Miller beamed gratefully at Director Danielson, deeply moved and overjoyed, thinking he could secure social assistance with minimal effort. Seeing William Miller sharply dressed in a suit and leather shoes, exuding the air of a nouveau riche, Director Danielson's memory finally caught up. He abruptly leaped from his chair, yelled, then fell silent. Then, Director Danielson unleashed a torrent of words at William Miller. William Miller, did I just hear you right? Are you sure you're not mistaken? You're a strapping young lad, dressed to the nines in a suit and leather shoes, and you want social assistance. This isn't something you can just ask for. Rural social assistance isn't for freeloaders, it's for truly vulnerable groups facing hardship. A tall, strong, handsome, young man like you applying for social assistance is laughable. You dropped out of college and vanished. You caused your family grief, your enemies glee, not to mention the death of your parents, shaking the whole province, the whole country, sending your village into chaos. The state, the government, spent so much manpower and resources searching for you. Weren't you going to build a career, go out into the world, make something of yourself? Haven't you returned in glory? And now you're asking for social assistance. Get out of here, William Miller. Oh, Grandma, my temper. How could I be so foolish? I didn't think things through. This is so embarrassing, especially in front of a beautiful woman. William Miller clutched his head, his face sinking lower and lower. Enough. William Miller abruptly lifted his head, glaring fiercely at Director Danielson, raising a hand to cut off the director's tirade. Director, is this? Emily Grant blinked her bright eyes, feigning surprise. However, Emily Grant wasn't surprised by William Miller, she admired his daring and unconventional thinking. Emily Grant was surprised by Director Danielson, who usually spoke haltingly, pausing between every word. Today, his eloquence seemed unnatural, like a performance. His language skills had improved dramatically, his words flowing smoothly and articulately. She couldn't help but silently praise him, looking at his smug face with admiration. Shut up. If I can't get it, then fine. What's the point of all this useless talk? You think you're some great debater? I can speak better than you, argue better than you. William Miller, furious, glared at Director Danielson, ready to strike if the director continued berating him. My apologies. I can't blame you. Everyone has their own aspirations, William. Thankfully, Chairman Danielson relented. Otherwise, a major argument would have erupted in the village committee. Chairman Danielson, after berating William Miller, calmed down and considered William's plight, orphaned and alone, and said remorsefully, "However, let's be realistic, William. You wouldn't be here if you weren't in dire straits, but your request for social assistance doesn't align with current policy. Try finding work. Farming isn't feasible. If you genuinely can't find anything, come back. Your ID and household registration need renewal, they were annulled after your disappearance." "All right." William Miller, feeling like he'd swallowed a mix of bitter and sweet, found his anger subsiding. Since Chairman Danielson had softened his stance, he'd go with the flow. "This is acceptable," he thought. "Tell you what, Emily." Chairman Danielson said to Emily Grant, "Help William draft a report." He turned to William Miller with a smile. "William, go to the police station to update your records. You can't get by without an ID these days." "Yes, Chairman Danielson." Emily Grant waited for Chairman Danielson to leave, then stood, offering William Miller some tissues from a box before returning to her leather chair. She pulled open a drawer and her fingers clicked across the keyboard. William Miller took the tissues, dabbing at himself haphazardly. His mood finally stabilized as he quietly watched Emily Grant working. Preoccupied with the assistance issue, William Miller hadn't initially noticed Emily Grant. Now, with time to kill, he decided to appreciate the view. Time to enjoy the scenery, he thought. Whoa! Grandma, with my fiery temper, I've stumbled upon another beauty. My luck's on a roll. He touched his head, giddy with delight. Eating is a struggle. If not for Aunt Miles, I'd be begging. And without Rose Miles buying me clothes, I wouldn't be in this suit, I'd be a vagrant. Still, I have plenty of free time and a good mood now. He mused. Emily Grant pulled a sheet from the printer and jumped slightly, seeing William Miller beside her. She offered him a charming smile. Done. Here you go. Get this sorted when you have a moment. William Miller composed himself. Thank you, village official Grant. You're welcome. Emily Grant's captivating eyes crinkled with a sweet smile, sending a wave of warmth over William Miller. Emily Grant extended her small hand. I'm Emily Grant. A name at the top of the world, Emily. William Miller, a fine name, like the opium hero, Wade Miller, just reversed. Once strangers, twice acquaintances, thrice friends. Emily Grant felt an immediate connection with William Miller. It was love at first sight, though a belated one. Naturally. William Miller let Emily Grant present her small, white hand. He rose slowly, one hand in his vest pocket, and clasped her soft hand, feigning nonchalance. So, Miss Emily Grant, how do you propose we become friends? William Miller gazed tenderly at Emily Grant, holding her soft hand neither too tightly nor too loosely, thinking to himself, this little minx, don't let her see I'm intentionally drawing this out, enjoying her touch. Emily Grant's small hand felt incredibly good, soft and smooth, and William Miller couldn't help but feel a thrill. William Miller, a friend is a friend, no matter what, Emily Grant said with a charming smile and alluring eyes. Well, I have to go home and think about it carefully. I haven't figured it out yet. Emily Grant, so sorry. William Miller scratched his head, looked up blankly, and said with a sly grin. Ah, how can you be like this? I'm a girl, I've been so generous, befriending you, and you're still like this? What kind of person are you? Is there something wrong with your head? Emily Grant immediately withdrew her small hand from William Miller's, saying angrily. There's absolutely nothing wrong with my head. William Miller, still holding his hand out, looked at it awkwardly before lowering it, smiling foolishly at Emily Grant. What's there to say? Arrogant, utterly conceited. Emily Grant stamped her foot, her full-chested figure swaying as she said petulantly, if I were in a strange land with no relatives, I wouldn't need friends anyway. Oh. But, Emily, isn't making friends the serious matter? William Miller rubbed his head and nose, looked up blankly, smiled innocently, and then asked with a serious expression. Of course, making friends is a serious matter, it requires careful consideration. Huh? Emily Grant gave William Miller a coquettish glance and said, William Miller, you're not a bad guy, are you? How could I be? I'm a good guy, a genuinely good guy. William Miller praised himself with the tone of a matchmaker praising her daughter-in-law. Since it's a serious matter requiring careful consideration, I have to think about it, think it over. A girl fears marrying the wrong man, a boy fears entering the wrong profession, my mother used to tell me that, right, Emily? William Miller winked at Emily Grant with a triumphant smile, feeling incredibly pleased with himself. Fine, don't be friends then, who needs you? Emily Grant looked at William Miller petulantly, appearing quite pleased. She felt that William Miller was truly special, different from others, not the type to go with the flow. I'm leaving. Bye-bye. William Miller waved his hand and walked out of the village committee hall, heading home. Emily Grant stared blankly at William Miller until his figure and footsteps gradually disappeared. Hashtag Chapter 7 An unexpected encounter in the wilderness. The sky was clear blue, the sun shone brightly, and spring was in full bloom. William Miller, carrying incense, candles, sticky rice cakes, food, steamed buns, and other offerings, accompanied Aunt Miles to his parents' graves for the annual memorial service. Afterwards, Aunt Miles descended the mountain. William Miller poured wine, lifting the cup and sprinkling it over the graves. He then lit 6 cigarettes, placing them in a row on the grave in front of the tombstone. Holding 4 incense sticks, 2 in each hand, he inserted them into the ground and then burned a stack of joss paper, kneeling and kowtowing. Wah! Father, Mother! William Miller wailed miserably, William is your nemesis, the one who caused your deaths. Father, Mother, but, William truly didn't mean to. Father, Mother, William was helpless. Wah! Father, Mother, do you know how fiercely the thunder roared and how heavily the rain poured that night? It was on that very night that William was abducted by aliens. William was so confused. Before I could understand what was happening, I hastily agreed to participate in an elite training program. Father, Mother, if William had known there was a problem with the way time flows on that planet, I would have rather died than stay. I would have rather died on Earth, died in my hometown, died in my own house. Ah! Father, Mother, we are separated by life and death, by 2 different worlds. William Miller wept, his grief intensifying with each sob, the pain overwhelming him. Tears streamed down his face, mingling with the white streaks of mucus dripping from his chin, each drop falling onto the grave. Lost in a haze of grief and frantic thoughts, William Miller succumbed to despair. His heart ached, a profound emptiness consuming him. Oh God! My temper! What's the point of living alone? William Miller cried out, Mother, Father, your son William is coming to join you. With that, William Miller prepared to dash his head against the tombstone. Just then, a rustling sound emanated from the purple bamboo grove beside the grave, like a strong wind whispering through the stalks, creating a wave of bamboo. Hearing the noise, William Miller halted his action, abruptly lifting his head and turning towards the sound, his drooping ears perking up. Who's there? Suddenly alert, William Miller sprang to his feet, his body agilely darting to the edge of the bamboo grove. He peered into the depths of the grove and shouted. But there was no reply. William Miller rubbed his slightly numb head. Good heavens, my temper. Could this be the spirits of my parents manifesting? Are they telling me not to die? Do they want me to live well, to truly live well? William Miller scratched his head and blinked, his bright eyes contemplating the situation. He was both a believer and a skeptic when it came to matters of ghosts and spirits. He shook his head, reconsidered, and shook his head again. What's in the bamboo grove? What kind of wild animal? A hare, a jungle fowl, a wild boar, a badger, a deer. Or could it be a person? All are possibilities. But if it's a person, why didn't they answer my shout? Who is it? Come out. If you don't, I won't be polite. William Miller said sternly. He was slightly irritated, but mostly bluffing. He. Suddenly, a clear, silvery laugh, as sweet and gentle as a chime, rang out from the depths of the bamboo grove. Isn't that the laughter of a female ghost from legends, or the laughter of a fox spirit, a demon? William Miller thought, a shiver running down his spine. He couldn't deny a growing sense of fear, the hairs on his arms standing on end. Are you human or ghost? Or are you a fox spirit, a demon? You're the ghost. You're the fox spirit, the demon. A young woman's soft voice responded from within the bamboo grove, gradually drawing closer. It's you. William Miller exclaimed. Emerging from the depths of the bamboo grove was Mary Carter, the girl with the adorable, childlike face he had encountered at the small eatery. Mary Carter also expressed surprise. It's you. William Miller, paying respects to your parents, I see. It's me. Once met, twice acquainted. Surely you haven't forgotten me? Mary Carter said with a smile, revealing teeth as white as jade, her face beaming. Mary, why are you here? Shouldn't you be tending to the eatery? And please, don't mind me, but Rose told me your name is Mary Carter. Chow Kwok Hai's wife. William Miller said. He. I tend to it when I feel like it. Is there a problem with that? Mary Carter replied with a charming smile. William Miller felt that this girl with the adorable, childlike face was particularly fond of smiling, and her smiles were not only captivating but also full of hidden meaning. Oh. I didn't expect you to be so free. William Miller looked at Mary Carter with a strange expression. He. Don't misunderstand, I still have my in-laws, don't I? If I'm not there, they'll look after the shop. So I'm very free, really very free. Aren't all fishermen's wives like that? Some are even freer than me. Don't look at me like that, really. Mary Carter proudly explained to William Miller. Ah, so that's it. You're free. Good, very good. That's right, nothing is more precious than freedom. William Miller smiled at her, giving a thumbs up. You too, William Miller. Mary Carter, when talking, always liked to glance at William Miller's face with her bright eyes. William Miller was momentarily flushed by Mary Carter's gaze, extremely embarrassed. However, at the same time, a flicker of pleasure passed through his heart, spreading to his limbs, and William Miller secretly mused, does this woman like me? Little minx, I'm counting on it, my fiery temperament, haha. Sis Kwok, calling her Sis Kwok, after her husband's name, what are you doing here? You scared me to death. I thought it was really a ghost or something. William Miller said. Here. Mary Carter smiled seductively again, holding up the black plastic bag and the crescent-shaped sickle in front of William Miller, see for yourself. William Miller froze, then stepped forward, curious, and reached out to grab the plastic bag. His eyes flashed. Seeing a few purple bamboo shoots in the black plastic bag, he immediately understood, this girl, it turned out she was digging bamboo shoots. Immediately, William Miller recalled the deep ravine of her cleavage when she bought cigarettes at the small shop, and couldn't help but look up. Just now, he was so busy talking that he had missed appreciating the spring scenery of this petite woman. However, today Mary Carter had changed her clothes. Today she was wearing a dark blue tracksuit, with a red and black sweater underneath, and a high collar, covering her fair skin and ample bosom, not revealing any spring scenery at all. The mountain wind is cold, how could she not wear more? Women must know how to protect themselves. Damn it! Why is she like this? William Miller suddenly felt a little puzzled. Sis-in-law, you're dressed so beautifully today. You look so majestic. William Miller exclaimed, looking at Mary Carter's attire, naturally not without a bit of flattery towards the young woman. Really? Mary Carter seemed very happy. This was the first time she had heard someone of the opposite sex praise her like this. However, her eyes suddenly glanced at her jade-white hand, which was still being held tightly by William Miller. Oh, sorry. Sis-in-law. William Miller blushed, quickly letting go. The young woman saw him blush. After all, he was holding a married woman's hand. I'm the one who should apologize. Mary Carter suddenly lowered her head, looking at her feet in their hiking boots. Why? William Miller scratched his head, looking at the blushing Mary Carter, a little confused. I called you over here. Mary Carter raised her head, glanced at him, and said, then lowered her head to look at her feet again. Heh heh. William Miller scratched his head, looked up, dazed, and grinned mischievously. I thought it was something serious. It's okay, sis-in-law, it's alright, sis-in-law. Is that so? Mary Carter raised her head, glanced at William Miller, lowered her head, then glanced again, and shyly said, little brother. William Miller kept calling her sis-in-law, his words honey-sweet, calling her until Mary Carter's bones tingled. Little brother, don't call me that. Actually, you don't need to call me sister-in-law. Mary Carter said. Why? William Miller asked her. How old are you? 22, so, I'm the same age as you, just call me Mary. Mary Carter said cheerfully. No, we can't disregard etiquette, it's impolite to call you that. William Miller said with a laugh. Well then. Mary Carter thought for a moment, thought and thought again, then said, in public, call me sister-in-law, but in private, call me Mary. How can that be? William Miller started to get a little confused. Suddenly his heart bloomed like a flower, thinking to himself, this girl. What kind of talk is this? Only lovers address each other like that. Is this petite woman hinting at something? Does she want to flirt with me? But I can't be rash, I have to test her further. Next, William Miller asked her about her height, weight, and so on. Mary Carter also happily answered William Miller's questions, answering everything he asked. The atmosphere was very harmonious, the conversation lively. Actually, sister-in-law, oh no. Mary, you are very beautiful, especially very lovely, very lovely. William Miller touched his head, smiling as he continued. Is it because of my baby face? Not really. Beautiful people are lovely. William Miller said very seriously, really. I'm not lying. To you. William, you're a man of the world, why would you say a plain, ordinary woman like me is beautiful, even very beautiful? Mary Carter raised her head, looked at him frankly with affectionate eyes for a moment, then lowered her head again. I'm a married woman, a faded flower. Hee, not at all, not at all. What does a woman's charm and loveliness have to do with being married? William Miller touched his head, his face flushed, his heart beat fast, but he still tried to control himself as he spoke. Really? But why are you laughing? Don't laugh at me. Mary Carter quickly glanced at William Miller, lowering her head even further, her small, pretty face like a ripe apple. Sister-in-law, this is what they call a mountain from the side, a peak from the front, near or far, high or low, each view is different. Even though you're married, you're still very pure. William Miller touched his head, looked up at the white clouds drifting across the blue sky, and spoke slowly. Little brother, you're so eloquent, am I really as good as you say? Mary Carter raised her head, looked at William Miller with affectionate eyes again, and suddenly said with admiration, little brother, you've been out in the world for so many years, and you're so handsome, you must have beauties surrounding you like clouds, and some clinging to you, right? Hee. William Miller touched his head and then pinched his nose, pretending not to know what to say, just grinning foolishly. Why haven't I seen you bring any beauties home? Mary Carter said with a hint of bitterness in her voice. Hee. William Miller touched his head and nose again, grinning foolishly. Maybe, you have high standards, don't see anyone worthy, or maybe you're too picky, the more you choose, the more confused you get, dazzled by the flowers, or maybe you don't like women. Could it be you want to remain pure? Handsome, this handsome guy, handsome. Mary Carter couldn't seem to hold back her words, calling him handsome with every sentence. Making William Miller feel lightheaded, like he was floating on clouds, truly believing he was a jade tree in the forest, with a face like Sebastian Stan, beautiful like Anne Hathaway. William Miller, stop laughing, speak up, they want you to answer, Mary Carter said in a soft, coquettish voice. No, I wasn't. William Miller suddenly remembered the strange encounter, feeling extremely uncomfortable, but he couldn't reveal it in front of a woman. Actually, a man should prioritize his career, establish himself before pursuing love. Isn't that right, sister-in-law? Sister-in-law, Adam goes fishing at sea and rarely comes home, don't you feel lonely? William Miller wanted to probe her practically. Not lonely. Why would I be lonely? I'm not lonely. Mary Carter said, then lowered her head, feigning shyness. Women often say the opposite of what they mean, and Mary Carter was no different. It's good that you're not lonely. Otherwise, it would be very sad. William Miller scratched his head, feigning awkwardness, saying words contrary to his own feelings. But I can't say I'm not lonely at all, to be honest with you, little brother. Everyone feels that way. Mary Carter said shyly. Oh. William Miller suddenly felt joyful. Are you lonely, little brother? Mary Carter suddenly glanced at William Miller and said, you can't help me anyway, why ask? Just asking. Oh, sister-in-law, what did you just say? William Miller said. Nothing. Mary Carter blushed, denying it outright. William Miller reached out his hand, but retracted it, feeling his mouth dry. He cursed himself for being useless, lacking even this bit of courage, daring to even bear the name William. He swallowed, then reached out again, his palm sweating, suddenly grasping the back of her hand. Mary Carter's jade-like hand trembled, struggling in William Miller's grasp, but he didn't let go, holding on tight. Holding her hand was like holding her soul. Sister-in-law, do you want me to help you? William Miller asked, his voice trembling, pulling her hand closer to him. No, Mary Carter said, but her body leaned into William Miller. Oh, good sister-in-law, William Miller released her hand, quickly using both hands to grasp her round, fragrant shoulders, face to face, eyes locked on hers. He felt her shoulders soft and supple, delightful to the touch, his whole body heating up. William Miller lowered his head, aiming for her luscious red lips, about to bite down. Just then, at the fork in the road below the tomb, came the call of Granny Miles. William, are you done yet? Mary Carter suddenly pulled herself away from William Miller, grabbing the black plastic bag and the crescent-shaped sickle, hurriedly saying to him, if Granny asks, tell her I wasn't here. William Miller stared blankly as Mary Carter ran like a rabbit towards the bamboo forest, forgetting to answer Granny Miles. Hashtag Chapter 8, The Beautiful Village. Cadre visits the construction site. Blue sky, white clouds, blue waves lapping against the shore, the sea and sky blending seamlessly, a picturesque and magnificent scene. All right. Everyone, take a break. As soon as Jack Turner finished speaking, the construction workers building the beach bar put down their tools and hurried to the sandy embankment to rest. Building a modern bar on the beach? Unprecedented. These days, merchants are resourceful, or as the cool kids say, creative. A beachfront bar, what a groundbreaking idea. Imagine, a swanky beach bar, trendy tunes, a fine drink, a beautiful companion, a gentle sea breeze, the vast bay stretching out before you, waves crashing like 1,000 horses, white foam like flowers, white sails, seagulls soaring, pure paradise, a life of the gods. Modern folks work hard for their cash, and they play hard with it too. The foundations taking shape, looking like a plane ready for takeoff. It's straightforward, a solid base, a complete deck, open railings, and a simple roof. The main job is the foundation, which needs a lot of stone, and with the tourist season deadline, we need a lot of hands. During a break, a dignified woman approached from the sandy embankment. As she drew closer, they realized she was a striking beauty, in her 20s, tall and slender. She wore a chic, gray-white business dress over a black t-shirt, the neckline just right, revealing her elegant neck and full bust without being too revealing, perfect for the office. Her long legs moved gracefully, the dress hitting just below the knee, hinting at the curves above, undeniably gorgeous. This girl was a heart-stopper, a true enchantress. Swish, swish, the workers' eyes, more than a dozen, followed her like sunflowers to the sun. They scrambled up from the sand like soldiers before their general. Jack Turner's eyes lit up, fixated on the innocent girl. He looked her up and down, a sudden heat rising within him. The older workers felt a youthful spark, charmed by the young woman. They grinned silently, nodding at her, hoping to catch her eye and win her favor. "Hello, miss." "Hello." As she neared, they recognized her, Emily Grant, the University Village official from Peach Blossom Village. Emily Grant, ever gracious, approached them with a smile and a greeting. "Hello, leader. Here for an inspection." Jack Turner, all smiles and flattery, pushed his way to the front. "Do I know you?" Emily Grant asked with a smile. "You're the famous University Village official, and a great beauty. Everyone knows you." "Hello. I'm the construction manager here, Jack Turner. Soon, I'll be managing the bar too. The owner, Harry Wood, is my brother. Flying Tiger Corporation, you've heard of it, right? This beach bar is just a small venture of his. I'll be the manager here." Jack Turner gushed, emphasizing beauty and manager, as if afraid she might miss it. "Thank you, Manager Turner. I'm Emily Grant. I wouldn't dare call myself a leader, much less say I'm here to inspect. Director Danielson sent me to see the construction site. If you need any assistance from the village committee, just let me know. I've already met your boss, a very capable and charismatic entrepreneur. His beach bar, after all, is an investment project in our village. I also want to understand more about the construction progress, as well as the workers' thoughts, as we're building a harmonious society now. Nothing more." Emily Grant spoke at length, her words logical and irrefutable. "The village officials are so concerned about our business, I thank you on behalf of the bar, thank you to the village committee." Jack Turner said, admiring Emily Grant's graceful figure, and enthusiastically extended his hand, wanting to grasp her jade-white hand. However, Emily Grant didn't see his outstretched hand, nor did she offer hers, so Jack Turner retracted his hand, extremely embarrassed, his face alternating between red and white. At this moment, Emily Grant's beautiful eyes happened to look away. Emily Grant raised her head, stretched her white neck, put her hand on her forehead, and looked at the young man on the sand below with a strange expression, her star-like eyes blinking. "Manager Turner." Emily Grant paused, then turned to Jack Turner apologetically, "Please continue with your work. I'll just take a look around here. If you'll permit me." Emily Grant finished with a playful remark, trying to lighten the atmosphere. Of course. You're too polite, please. Please." Jack Turner beamed, replying repeatedly, "Feel free to look around. Don't mention it." Emily Grant smiled politely and charmingly at Jack Turner, pulling on the bag slung over her shoulder, which, apart from a notebook and a ballpoint pen, contained only a few women's toiletries, such as lipstick, eyebrow pencil, and a small mirror. Carrying the bag, Emily Grant walked leisurely towards the man who was half lying, half sitting at the foot of the sand embankment. This man looked like William Miller. Emily Grant guessed as she walked, but she wasn't sure, a little hesitant in her heart, wondering, could she be mistaken? Why would he be here? Then she smiled slightly. Perhaps he came to the beach for some fresh air, but judging by his attire, a moss-green military uniform, it didn't seem like he was here for relaxation. He leaned against the jagged stone wall of the embankment, his long legs stretched out, one straight, one bent, his buttocks resting on the silk-soft sand, a dog's tail grass held in his hand, placed against his lips, gently pressed. He tilted his ear, listening to the murmuring waves, watching the small boats bobbing in the bay. His mind was immersed, almost reaching a state of trance. He was thinking about his amorous encounter earlier that day, the mountain breeze whispering past, a beautiful young wife in his arms, his lips slowly seeking her plump, red lips. He had felt their warmth and moisture, about to touch them, but was interrupted midway, suddenly hearing his name called, the alluring red lips vanishing into thin air. "Hey! Hey!" Emily Grant called out to the man, neither too softly nor too loudly, her intention clear. She wanted him to turn around so she could see who he was. Yet, the man remained oblivious, seemingly unnoticing. Seemingly being the operative word. "Hey! Hey!" Emily Grant's voice gained a few decibels. "Emily Grant." The other girl suddenly flew back, transforming into Emily Grant. William Miller abruptly turned, his eyes like cold stars briefly flaring in the sky. He sprang up, pushing off the ground, leaping onto the embankment. With a joyous shout, he ran towards Emily Grant, stopping before her. William Miller. Emily Grant's joy intensified, an undeniable elation, as she gazed at William Miller's jade-like physique and handsome face. Emily Grant, after affectionately calling William Miller's name, felt a surge of curiosity. "William Miller, what are you doing here?" "Heh heh. Life's paths cross in the strangest places." William Miller scratched his head, looking up in a daze, his words nonsensical. "William Miller, you're such a poet," Emily Grant, delighted by the unexpected encounter, said with a charming smile. "You're so leisurely." "Leisurely? Oh. Miss Grant, I'm working construction here." "You think I'm here on vacation, Miss Grant?" "Heh heh." William Miller let out a hearty laugh, exuding a blunt and boisterous air. "Construction work?" Truthfully, Emily Grant was a bit surprised to find William Miller working on a construction site, but she didn't find it strange. With an understanding smile, she said, "Construction work is good. It's honest work, nothing to be ashamed of." "Very good. A university graduate working construction must be due to unforeseen circumstances. Meeting an acquaintance in such a situation would naturally be awkward." To spare William Miller any embarrassment, Emily Grant offered him this encouragement. "Fancy meeting you here, fancy meeting you here." William Miller smiled, tossing back his long, romantic hair, and extended his large hand towards Emily Grant. "The pleasure's all mine. The pleasure's all mine." Emily Grant quickly offered her slender hand. "Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you." "Hello. The pleasure's mine as well." Emily Grant immediately grasped William Miller's hand, finding it surprisingly soft and warm. "Hug. Hug. Hug her, quick." At this moment, the construction workers, witnessing village official Grant and William Miller, the down-on-his-luck university graduate, shaking hands face to face, yearned for a bit more drama. They began to holler and cheer, their eager eyes betraying their hope for this pair to become an item. William Miller, his hand still clasped around Emily Grant's soft, warm one, heard the workers urging in encouragement. He squinted, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Grandma's ghost. With my fiery temperament, is there anything I wouldn't dare to do?" This wasn't some shady, clandestine affair. Embracing Emily Grant right here, in front of everyone, would be a testament to his integrity, his open-heartedness, his utter coolness. William Miller suddenly spread his arms wide, waiting expectantly. Emily Grant's face flushed crimson. She quickly lowered her head, but in a blink, she looked up, letting out a soft before rushing into William Miller's embrace. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Good, good, good. The construction workers cheered enthusiastically. Clap, clap, clap. The workers clapped their hands with gusto. Kiss. 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 Seeing their boldness and openness, the workers, eager for a movie-like scene, craved more excitement. They continued to cheer and clap rhythmically. William Miller looked at Emily Grant looked at William Miller, they looked at each other and smiled. Emily Grant looked at William Miller looked at Emily Grant, they looked at each other and smiled again. How about this? William Miller stared at Emily Grant slightly lowered her head. But William Miller didn't dare to make a move, slightly shaking his head. Emily Grant, her face flushed, suddenly closed her eyes. Kiss her, kiss her, kiss her. The workers, seeing they wouldn't be any bolder, unwilling to give up, kept shouting. Sorry, Emily, for putting you in this awkward position. These workers just like to have their fun, you have to understand them. William Miller didn't hug Emily Grant tightly, just loosely, suddenly bringing his mouth towards hers, and when he was about to touch her luscious red lips, he stopped there, not crossing the line, pretending to open his mouth, softly whispering comfort in her ear. It's all right, William Miller, I understand. It's a harmonious society now, after all. Emily Grant leaned against William Miller's broad shoulder, her voice soft as an orchid, petite and utterly adorable. Get back to work. Get back to work. Jack Turner, seeing William Miller brazenly hugging and almost kissing Emily Grant, the college-educated village official, his face turned green with rage. Furious, he flew into a thunderous fit, yelling and hollering, then roared, all workers, immediately, you are required to start working. Don't miss a single spot. Hurry up. Seeing that the workers didn't seem to fully understand his words, still watching William Miller and Emily Grant clinging to each other, Jack Turner immediately bellowed, lazy and slow, are you lot going to work or not? However, Jack Turner glanced at William Miller and Emily Grant, his eyes strangely sweeping over them, especially Emily Grant's graceful figure. Emily Grant's fair face suddenly flushed crimson. Looking up at the white clouds in the blue sky, she said, William Miller, don't you think your hometown is beautiful? My hometown is beautiful, but not as beautiful as you. William Miller turned his head to look at the rippling bay and the undulating mountains in front of him, and said loudly. You're such a smooth talker, William Miller. I'm getting dizzy. Shall we take a walk along the beach? Emily Grant said with a charming smile. Let's do it another day, Emily. William Miller touched his head, then his nose, saying to Emily Grant. What's the matter, William? Emily Grant furrowed her willow-like brows, looking at William Miller with confusion. Charity begins at home, I have to get back to work. Don't you hear the dogs barking? William Miller spoke impudently. Oh, I forgot. All right then, William Miller, see you later. Emily Grant gave a forced smile, took a few steps back, waved goodbye to him, and then turned around, walking gracefully away. Goodbye. William Miller waved, thinking to himself, what a sly girl. Emily Grant's graceful walk, her beautiful backside particularly prominent, not too plump but slightly curved, hidden beneath her dress, made him touch his head then his nose, staring after her in a daze. Haven't you seen enough? Jack Turner suddenly yelled behind William Miller, but Jack Turner's eyes also darted back and forth over Emily Grant, especially her shapely backside. Sorry. William Miller jumped, startled by Jack Turner's shout, and then apologized to him. That punk. Chatting with Emily Grant for a few minutes, did it really delay the work that much? Even if it did, how much time was actually lost? Such a tightwad, and he calls himself the grand boss's nephew, the little boss. William Miller glared at Jack Turner and walked away. Stop right there. Jack Turner bellowed, waiting for William Miller to halt before grinding out, "Your wages for today. Gone. Consider, forfeited." The words seemed to pain him to utter. Oh. William Miller pondered this for a long moment, his single syllable laced with a strange mixture of curiosity and amusement. William Miller thought, bloody hell. That little punk, just a short while ago, damn it, you were there too, weren't you? Emily Grant, that gorgeous gal, just wanted a friendly chat with me, what's the big deal? Why the long face? Oh, I get it, you're jealous. Green with envy. Good. Die of it, you little twerp. After a long pause, William Miller stated flatly, fine. No pay, no problem. Seeing William Miller's nonchalance, rage twisted Jack Turner's face. He's looking down his nose at me, ain't he? The nerve, he gritted his teeth. William Miller, you're fired. Don't even bother showing up tomorrow. You're firing me, foreman. Least you could do is give me a reason, eh? William Miller scratched his head, feigning a look of innocent bewilderment. A sly grin played on his lips as he calmly observed Jack Turner's crimson face. You wanna get a rise out of me? Not gonna happen. Let's hear what kind of bull you're gonna sling, look around ya. Look at these blokes. See anyone as young as you? You're a sea turtle, ain't ya? Loaded. Why bother with this backbreaking work, huh? Jack Turner's face was a mask of cold disdain. I like it. What's it to ya? William Miller scratched his head and nose, giving Jack Turner a contemptuous glance. Humph. Jack Turner's mouth twisted in a grimace as he glared at William Miller. Pretty boy like you, all slicked up, you got yourself a sugar mama, haven't ya? What? The insinuation about Rose Miles sent a wave of crimson flooding William Miller's face. He was about to explode. Bloody hell. Say that again, I dare ya. Kept man. Jack Turner, slightly cowed by the hawk-like intensity in William Miller's eyes, repeated the accusation, his voice less confident, a flicker of fear in his gaze. You son of a bitch, I'll kill ya. William Miller snatched up a broken half-brick from the ground, brandishing it menacingly. This spoiled brat'll piss himself. Once he runs, I'll give him a good kick in the arse. That'll teach him to mess with me, hit me. Go on. I dare ya. Come on, then. Come on. Jack Turner glared at William Miller, his bravado surprising. Instead of fleeing, he advanced. Crack, a sharp sound echoed, brick against forehead, or perhaps forehead against brick. Skin split, blood flowed, bright crimson, shockingly bright. Assault. A college student's gone and clocked someone. Foreman attacked by a worker. Call the cops. Chaos erupted. Soon, the chilling wail of approaching sirens pierced the air, #WeU. WeU, #### Chapter 9, invited for tea at the police station. Rose Miles, could you come here for a moment? What is it, Deputy Chief Lee? Oh. Yes. I'll be right there. Rose Miles was hard at work in the accounting office when she received a call from Deputy Chief Lee of the police station. Her heart pounding, face flushed crimson, Rose Miles told a middle-aged woman in the same room, Sister Jackson, I have to step out for a bit. Rose, look at you, all flustered. Don't rush, okay? Go on. There's nothing urgent here anyway. Sister Jackson, looking at Rose Miles's beautiful, blushing face, comforted her. All right, I'll be going then, Sister Jackson. Rose Miles went to her scooter parked in the unit's courtyard, put on the helmet hanging on it, swung her long legs over the seat, started the engine, and hurriedly rode out onto the street. After a few turns, she veered from the main road onto a smaller one, and soon arrived at the police station. Parking under the front steps, she took off her helmet, hung it on the scooter, gracefully swung around, and dismounted. Rose Miles took the steps 2 at a time, her hips swaying, and strode imposingly into Deputy Chief Lee's office. Deputy Lee. What happened to William Miller? She asked anxiously. Robert Lee, the deputy chief, with his crew-cut and brisk demeanor, simply smiled without saying a word, pointed to the chair in front of his desk, then got up and went to the water dispenser. He poured a glass of water and handed it to Rose Miles, who was seated but still visibly worried. Thank you. Rose Miles took the disposable cup with both hands, giving Robert Lee a charming smile. Don't mention it. Robert Lee smiled gently. What happened, exactly? Rose Miles asked, her willow-like eyebrows furrowed, eager to know William Miller's situation. Don't worry, it's just a minor squabble. Deputy Chief Lee said calmly. William Miller hit Director Turner with a brick. To put it harshly, it's quite serious, since he resorted to violence, causing injury and bleeding. As the saying goes, seeing blood loses 3 points. To put it lightly, it's not that serious, just a superficial injury, a little bleeding, and the other party was also acting provocatively. When can William Miller be released? Rose Miles breathed a sigh of relief, but still worried, her eyes brimming with tears. It's all right, you can take him home. Robert Lee glanced at the distressed and emotional Rose Miles, noticing her full chest heaving slightly, and quickly comforted her. Rose, look at you. He then handed her a few tissues. Thank you, Deputy Lee. Rose Miles said gratefully, wiping her eyes with the tissues. Don't mention it. We're all friends here, right? Robert Lee looked at Rose Miles's small, rosy face and smiled warmly. He admired her beauty and personality, but rarely had the chance to approach her. In this small town, encounters were infrequent. Now that she had a problem, how could he not help? Besides, it wasn't against the law, just a small matter. Thank you. Thank you. I'll treat you to a meal sometime. Rose Miles raised her willow-like eyebrows, smiled charmingly, and said cheerfully. No need at all. Robert Lee said. William Miller, that young man, with his handsome features and carefree demeanor, is quite the heartthrob. Why would he settle for being a laborer? Such a pity, such a pity. Rose Miles, what's your relationship with William Miller? Oh. This was a sensitive and difficult question to answer. Rose Miles's mind raced. Oh, she uttered, then quickly said, he's my neighbor, my mother's adopted son. Your mother's adopted son? Robert Lee echoed incredulously. This answer was far better than he'd imagined, putting him considerably at ease. He still had a chance. Yes, sir. Rose Miles's face lit up with a dazzling radiance as she spoke of William Miller, her heart brimming with joy. Have the two of you progressed further? Robert Lee asked tentatively. Forgive me if this is too forward. It's all right. Not yet, though. Rose Miles blushed, a proud smile gracing her face. It's hard to say what the future holds, hee. You two are a match made in heaven. Robert Lee said, his words lacking sincerity. Thank you. Can William Miller be released now? Can we leave? Rose Miles's mood had significantly improved. She stood up gracefully, her figure poised and confident, a captivating smile replacing her earlier distress. Certainly. Feel free to visit any time. Robert Lee's gaze lingered on Rose Miles's ample bosom and enchanting face as he offered his invitation with a smile. Visit often. Visit. Deputy Director Lee, that doesn't sound entirely appropriate, does it? With the matter resolved, Rose Miles's spirits were light, her words playful as she teased the deputy director. Right. Farewell. Or perhaps I should come to find you. I won't see you out, Rose Miles. Robert Lee finally asserted his authority as deputy director. At the police station's entrance, Rose Miles sat on her motorbike, her bright eyes fixed on the activity within. The door creaked open, a figure flashed by, and William Miller strode out, seemingly oblivious to Rose Miles beside him, heading towards the large courtyard. "Hey, hey, William Miller." Rose Miles followed William Miller on her motorbike as he slowly exited, but after a while, losing sight of him, she stopped outside the police station's courtyard. Suddenly, William Miller burst forth from beside the main gate, his face beaming. Like a cat, he swiftly scooped Rose Miles off her motorbike before she could react. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Rose Miles thrashed, one foot hitting the inside of William Miller's right thigh, the other striking his left shin. William Miller winced, but ignoring Rose Miles's continued struggles, he set her down, got on the motorbike, grabbed her helmet, put it on his own head, then patted the back seat and uttered a cryptic phrase, "Grandma. I won't let anyone insult you anymore." "William Miller, what do you mean?" Rose Miles was bewildered by his words, completely lost. Seeing that William Miller didn't respond, Rose Miles changed the subject. "William Miller, can you even ride a motorbike?" "Can I ride? I'm a pro." William Miller, freshly released from the police station, boasted, thinking to himself, "You little brat, with my fiery temper, I could ride a freakin' flying saucer, travel to other planets. I'm gonna be scared of this toy." So he bragged, 10 years ago, I was already riding motorbikes, zooming around like a whirlwind. Easy peasy. "Rose, little sis, sweet little sis, hold on tight. Your bro's about to race. We're gonna fly, fly high." "Ha ha ha," William Miller roared with laughter. The kid was clearly bonkers. "William Miller, slow down. Slow down. What kind of driving is this?" Rose Miles clung tightly to William Miller's broad back, her small face flushed with excitement pressed against his shoulder, a warmth spreading through her body. She felt so happy. Back then, William Miller, was already a brilliant racer, crowds of fans, a whole sky full of admirers. William Miller continued to brag, exaggerating to the point of dizziness, even feeling a bit lightheaded himself. "Why didn't I see any of that?" Rose Miles blinked, bewildered. "Rose Miles, how old were you then? Still wearing pants with holes in the bottom, weren't you?" William Miller retorted cheekily. "Keep blowing. Inflate it all you want, the taxman won't come knocking." Rose Miles finally realized William Miller was boasting. Haha, William Miller threw back his head and laughed heartily, immensely pleased with himself. "You boastful magpie, have you no shame?" Rose Miles wrapped her arms around William Miller's waist, her face pressed against his broad back, scolding him affectionately. "You little devil, you snot-nosed kid, what do you know?" William Miller feigned annoyance. "Hateful William Miller. Snot-nosed brat. Hateful William Miller." Vroom, 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 the motorbike roared, carrying William Miller and Rose Miles into a narrow alley in the village. However, Rose Miles chattered and laughed all the way, and when the motorbike finally slowed to a stop, she unexpectedly jumped off without a word or greeting, grabbed her bag, and huffed into the house, slamming her bedroom door shut with a loud bang. "Strange." William Miller, completely baffled, muttered under his breath at Rose Miles's retreating figure. He quickly hopped off the bike, tucked his helmet under his arm, and immediately chased after her. "Hey! Hey, hey! My beautiful lady, my beautiful lady, my beautiful Miss Miles," bang. A powerful force pushed William Miller back a few steps, staggering him before he regained his balance. William Miller rubbed his slightly sore nose, tossed his long, romantic hair, and muttered thankfully, "Thank goodness, thank goodness. This handsome, straight nose of mine, if it were even slightly damaged, you little devil, do you know how you die later? You'd definitely regret it to death. Rose Miles, Rose Miles, Rose Miles. Open the door, open the door." William Miller knocked cautiously and gently. Hashtag chapter 10, jealous little sister Rose, little sister, what's wrong? You were just laughing and talking with me, weren't you fine? Why are you suddenly sulking? What are you angry about? William Miller desperately wanted to understand the reason for Rose Miles's anger. Good little sister, even if you want to execute me, you should at least let me know why you want to execute me, right? William Miller felt incredibly wronged and frustrated, plastered against the door. With a click, Rose Miles yanked the door open. Unable to stop in time, William Miller stumbled forward, his momentum carrying him into Rose Miles, knocking her to the floor with him on top of her. William Miller lay on top of the girl's soft, warm body, the very beauty he secretly admired, and he wished he could stay there forever. The brat. My fiery temper. Wonderful, exhilarating. William Miller thought all this in a split second. But, I couldn't stay down any longer. Firstly, no one could blame me for having bad intentions. Secondly, no one could blame me for taking advantage of her predicament. And thirdly, most importantly, Rose Miles was struggling mightily under my weight, her arms and legs flailing wildly.